you go to a lot of these events,
I do.
events like it. What is there out there that's going on right now in the world of health and nutrition that you're particularly excited about, and what are the things you still despair over?
Well, I am particularly excited about the way that the internet is making truthful information available to everybody quickly. There's this myth out there that getting healthy is somehow complicated, that eating right is somehow complicated, that getting fit is it's this complicated idea. It's a very simple thing to do. It takes focus, practice, whole food, exercise, water, and anybody who's done it can explain it to you in a very simple way. So I'm very interested. It's making it easier for more and more people to not try to be healthy, but to actually be healthy. And it's the difference between reading about it and stressing about it and thinking about it and trying to do it right, and putting on your shoes, going outside, and going for a run. So I like the idea that more and more people are learning how to do it, and this kind of myth that it's overly complicated is being dissolved just by the prevalence of information that is now at everybody's fingertips. It's great fun now for someone who's really trying to get healthy to go out there and be able to access accurate information. So I'm really excited. I think that trend is a good one. And I think also that as more and more people are starting to realize, I think this era of processed food convincing people that it's somehow healthy, this throwback from the 1950s that, Wonder Bread and Velveeta or whatever is going to somehow change your life. There's this pushback to natural foods, unprocessed food, local foods. I think all of that trend is going to reflect well in sports as well.
But it's being clung onto a little, isn't it? The processed food and the misconceptions thereof about it, how it fuels us.
Yeah, sure.
It's being clung onto. Is the social media phenomenon, is that the solution? Our industry is now having to really change how they're going to operate. Are they going to have to present us with better products?
Well, it's an interesting one because there are a lot of vested interest and just financial interest in big companies and corporations around the world that just make a living selling processed food, and their only agenda is to convince you that you need more processed food. And that's a hard thing to push against. I think in addition to the social media, which is kind of fighting that the other way, it's just a generational shift. I think the current generation, or what they call Generation Y, has a very different mindset in terms of their relationship to how they accept media, their relationship to how they accept a lot of these claims from companies. They've been, if you think about it, you put yourself in the shoes of the Generation Y guy. They've been handed this environmental mess. They've been handed a world where most people are overweight. They've been handed a world where most people aren't healthy. They're very skeptical when the current ruling elites tell them that this is somehow the best way it is and the way it has to be. So I have high hopes for them to change things. And one of the things that I really enjoy most is going out and talking to that generation. Because the way they look at the world in a much different way than an older generation does. And a lot of people my age and older don't quite appreciate how different it is. And I think they will be in for quite a surprise when these young guys take over. And I'm looking forward to it.
Because there's more of a very healthy air of mistrust, isn't there, with information now. My father was a butcher, and of course he had all the information relating to to his industry come through. And only very recently did he say to me that the one thing you should be able to have faith in is that your food's okay. And it's a real moment of realisation for him and of someone of his generation that you have to really be very aware of what you're consuming, particularly in your diet.
Yeah. Well, I like it. It's the return of common sense. When you get in a situation where your environment gets so complex and so fast moving and there's so much stuff flying around all the time, you get overload and you kind of shut off. And what you tend to return to is just your instinctual common sense. And so much media and so much marketing has been to drive you away from what your common sense understanding is. I think that there's an overload in society that is coming back to common sense. And in terms of nutrition, common sense is eat what comes out of the ground. And so I'm excited about that. And so on one hand, as society speeds up and change speeds up, there is a natural and inevitable counter-revolution to that. Some people call it the holistic revolution, right? It's the push back against all of this technology, all of this fast pace that says, wait, we're not getting any happier, we're not getting any healthier, we're not making much progress here. Let's reconsider the whole thing. That, I think, is a cross-contextual trend which is certainly getting picked up in athletics, because in athletics, we just have a ruthless obsession with results. And results in an athletic world are very measurable, not only in terms of race results, but just in terms of how we feel. So I really think the leading edge of this holistic revolution, if you want to call it that, the athletes are going to be involved in exactly the same way the scientists and the academics are going to be involved. The leading edge of people that run into this because they're measuring results, athletes and academics, particularly the scientific side, are seeing it first.
So everything's kind of breaking down now into what works and what doesn't work, and what works is getting more press.
Yeah, well, it's just, evolution on another scale, and as we try on ideas and we see if they work, you remember a few years ago it was, everything has to be low fat, low fat, low fat, low fat. So they lowered the fat and then they put in more sugar, right? And then it was, now it's got to be high protein, right? And so then they put in artificial stuff and this and that. And everybody's kind of learning as we go. And the nice thing is, people are getting smarter. I mean, people are listening and people care. And it's getting harder and harder and more expensive for companies to deceive people because your average guy knows more. I think that's a really good trend, and that evolution never stops. So it's just where we are now, I think, is a very pivotal point, but a very interesting one. And I think it's representative in a lot of other contexts. You see, I think from the environmental movement is driving a lot of this, because finally the environmental movement, just in the last few years, has put up this sense of, there's a timeline going on here. In my lifetime, I might see something miserable, right? I might have to live through something terrible, or my children might have to live through that. For a long time, it was this sense of, that environmental stuff, I'll kick the can down the road. It's so far in the future, it's not worth worrying about. When that sense of mortality starts hitting us broadly as a society, then you start getting introspective as a society. We start saying, what is it that isn't working that's put us in this situation? And a lot of that has to, it's incontrovertible, a lot of what's working is our relationship with food. And if you look at that, the core of that is our relationship with whole foods and processed foods. And most people are addicted to processed foods. They haven't gone a single day in their whole life without eating processed food. I hadn't gone a whole day without processed food until I was in my 20s, with naturally, understandably disastrous results. So that bigger shift is what really excites me about it. But the athletes here in particular, I think they're a leading edge of it. So I'm always interested in where they are, where they're thinking, what they're doing at any point in time.
And of course we've got an emergence now of vegetarian, vegan, and even raw athletes. Which would come because, of course, you can have good results in the immediacy, in the present, but at the expense of healthy longevity. And is that something you're seeing as a greater appreciation for? Because there hasn't been in the past. There certainly hasn't been with, of course, bodybuilders notoriously getting heart disease and all sorts of other problems because they're high animal-based diets. Is that something you're seeing as a greater appreciation?
Well, it's interesting. It goes back to this holistic idea, which when you start looking at it, you see its threads everywhere. The vegetarian kind of meme, if you will, the thought idea of the vegetarians coming through is getting bigger throughout athletics. Again, linked to the environmental side a little bit and linked to the nutritional side. Because you've got increasingly overwhelming evidence of advantages to the vegetarian diet. And at the same time, you've got the benefits on the environmental side to a vegetarian diet. So those two things are, again, in this era of increasing common sense, if you're somebody that is trying to be helpful to yourself and to others, increasingly the vegetarian way of looking at things is making more sense. And that, again, is coming in everywhere, from your mainstream person to your athletes, cross-contextually, cross-nations. So, I see the rise of vegetarianism in athletics, again, to just be another example of this rising kind of holistic awareness that, hey, we're all on a pretty small planet, we're starting to bump into each other, let's think this through.